Hey everyone, let's get right to it. I've been doing reviews of Iranian regime media every few days since the beginning of this war and even in the lead up to it. And today I want to look at two news items, articles that appeared on the same day on WANA, which is the West Asia News Agency, WANA, W-A-N-A. That's the Iranian regime's English language outlet, one of them, the main one. And I want to look at these two items side by side because when you read them together, they tell you something really important about where the regime is right now and what message they're trying to send. And if you're new to this channel and you're wondering, why am I reading the propaganda of the Iranian regime? That's exactly why I'm reading it, because it is their propaganda. You see, when you read the media of the West, when you read media from a country that has freedom of the press, you don't necessarily know what the government is trying to do. You can't read between the lines and figure out what's happening inside the leadership just from reading what news items are there. But because there is no freedom of the press, and you know that every single story is deliberately chosen by the regime for a purpose, it actually is in some ways more revealing than free media is. I hope that made sense. All right, so let's start with the first story. Let me pull it up here, and here we go. The first item is, look at this, and this is true. This actually is this is accurate. Israel shuts down two major gas platforms, fearing Iranian strikes. Okay. Throughout the 40-day conflict waged by the Israeli regime and the United States in Iran, and notice they call it the 40-day conflict. This is something that I've pointed out before. Very important. The Iranian regime refers to the hostilities that began on February 28th and ended with the beginning of this quote-unquote ceasefire, the 40-day conflict, because of the resonance with Shiite theology and history of the importance of 40 days. It's beyond the scope of this conversation to talk about it, but you should find there's other videos on this channel where I discuss it. Just to put it very short, in Shiite history and Shiite theology, the 40th day after someone is martyred for the cause is this day of recommitment to the cause, and it's usually marked by these big demonstrations and shows of resolve and commitment. So they call it the 40-day conflict. Okay, throughout the 40-day conflict waged by the Israeli regime and the United States against Iran, Israel was forced to shut down its major Leviathan and Karish gas platforms due to the imminent threat of Iranian strikes. This strategic withdrawal from the energy market has reportedly inflicted billions of dollars in losses on the Israeli economy. Israeli media outlets report that the Tamar platform, operated by the American firm Chevron, was the only offshore facility to remain active during the war. It effectively became the central pillar of the energy sector and the sole supplier of natural gas, barely managing to prevent a total national blackout. The vulnerability of these assets was highlighted by direct Iranian strikes on the Bazan refinery complex in Haifa. Simultaneously, a barrage of drones and missiles targeted various gas platforms within the regime's economic waters, the regime meaning Israel. This forced Israeli military and security institutions into a precarious dilemma: weigh the catastrophic risks of an explosion at an active site against the immediate economic devastation of a total energy shutdown. Ultimately, the decision was made to prioritize safety by suspending operations at both Leviathan and Karish, the two gas fields. Okay, that is the entire story, and it ran today. And what should strike you immediately is that this is just talking about something that happened over the course of the 40-day, what they call the 40-day war of the fighting during that time. Why are they running this story today? So a few things. First of all, is this true? Yes, it is. Israel did shut down Leviathan and Karish when the war started in February. That's documented. The economic damage was real. There were about 300 million shekels a week of damage. 300 million shekels, so about $100 million. Okay, so the underlying factor is accurate. But here's what you need to understand about Iranian regime media. Okay? This is not a news item about Israeli energy infrastructure. The message is we can make Israel afraid for its own energy without even firing a single missile. It's a flex. Think about that for a second. Iran didn't hit the Leviathan. It didn't hit Karish. Israel shut it down themselves preemptively out of fear of what Iran might do. And now Iranian regime media runs that fact as some kind of victory, as a trophy. They're saying, look what our mere presence in this war accomplishes. It's a psychological warfare operation dressed up as a news article. Now, there's a second layer here that I want you to notice. We're right now in what appears to be a diplomatic window, right? There are talks maybe happening. There's a pause in certain type of hostilities. Negotiations are reportedly happening in back channels. If Iran chooses today to publish a story reminding everyone that Israel's energy infrastructure is exposed, this is a message to the negotiating table. Don't think you've taken the threat off the table. We haven't fired a shot at Leviathan, and Israel already shut it down themselves. Right? This is not a piece of journalism. This is a negotiating tactic. Okay, now let's look at the second item from today, and then we'll put them together. Because here's the second item: Iran in active talks with Russia to complete Bushehr nuclear plant. Now, think of what this is reporting. I have one of my rules in reading the news, and this isn't even really a news item. Remember, it's Iran media. But even if it's dressed up as a news item, one of my rules is pay attention to news items that aren't reporting on an actual event. You often have news items that are just saying someone said something, like a certain elected official made a certain statement. You have to ask yourself, why am I being told that? Why was the statement made? Didn't need to make the statement. A statement isn't a real event. It's just someone decided to put messaging out there. So you have to ask yourself why they did it. Not just listen to the content of what they said, but ask why it was said. That's an example of reporting on something that's not an event. And this is also another form of reporting on something that's not an event. Iran in active talks with Russia to complete this nuclear plant. So you have to ask yourself, what event is this reporting on? Apparently, these are talks that have been ongoing, and we're just being told that they're in these active talks. Did something happen today that led to this story being written? Of course not. It's not reporting on an event. So what is it? Iran in active talks with Russia to complete Bushehr nuclear plant. Here we go. Qasem Jalali, Iran's ambassador to Moscow, expressed hope early Friday, today, that the construction and completion of new units at the Bushehr nuclear power plant will be accelerated through ongoing cooperation with Russia. Expressed hope early Friday. So what are we reporting on? We're reporting on the ambassador to Moscow expressing hope that something will happen. Okay. Cooperation with Rosatom, big headline. In a recent interview, Jalali emphasized the continuous diplomatic and technical engagement between the two nations regarding the facility. Quote, we are in constant contact with one another and hope that conditions are established to allow Rosatom employees to carry out their work effectively, the ambassador stated. And then, Hormuz transit fees and exemptions. Addressing questions regarding Iran's recent decision to impose transit fees on vessels passing through the Strait of Hormuz, Jalali confirmed that Tehran is prioritizing its allies. He noted that special considerations and exemptions are being arranged for friendly countries, specifically Russia. And then the Iranian Ministry of Foreign Affairs is currently working to implement these exceptions to ensure that strategic partners are not negatively impacted by the new maritime tolls. Quote, I don't know what will happen in the future, Jalali added. However, our Ministry of Foreign Affairs is currently striving to utilize the exceptions designated for friendly nations like Russia. Okay. This is a very strange story. I want to start with the structure of the piece itself because it's really weird. Did you notice what happened in this piece? It's doing two things at once. The headline is about Bushehr, this nuclear plant of Russia and Iran cooperating to expand this nuclear plant. But then right in the middle of it, the ambassador pivots to Hormuz toll exemptions for Russia. The ambassador pivots. The article suddenly becomes about Hormuz toll exemptions. Friendly countries get a pass. Russia's a friendly country. Here are your perks for being friendly to us. Two messages in one article, right? One of them is that we're cooperating on the nuclear power plant. The second one is that Russia is going to get exempted from paying tolls in the Straits of Hormuz. Let's take the nuclear piece first. Iran has just absorbed the most devastating military campaign in its modern history. Its air defenses, by most accounts, are in ruins. The IRGC has been devastated. And today, Iran publishes a story about expanding its civilian nuclear program with Russian cooperation. That is what we call defiance. That's the regime saying, whatever you destroyed, the nuclear file is still open. Russia still has workers here, and we intend to continue apace. We're doing just fine. But now let's talk about Russia, because this is where it gets, I have to be honest, almost comic. I mean, there's comedy here. Let me explain what I mean. I guess it's kind of cynical. In January 2025, Iran and Russia signed a comprehensive strategic partnership, and it included security cooperation and defense coordination. Like they signed an alliance, the whole thing, a formal alliance. And then the war started on February 28th, and Russia has not lifted a finger to help Iran, not one finger. The most Russia has done is send Rosatom workers to explore the continuing of the building of a nuclear power plant. So what does Iran do? Iran gives Russia a Hormuz exemption. Iran publishes a warm story about how much they value the cooperation, right? Also, and right at the beginning of the war, Putin, a few days into it, sent a condolence letter to the Iranians over on the death of Ali Khamenei. Sent a condolence letter, right? So here's Iran's ambassador saying, and I'm reading directly here, our Ministry of Foreign Affairs is currently striving to utilize the exceptions designated for friendly nations like Russia. This is not the language of an alliance. This is the language of a weaker party trying to retain the loyalty of a patron who has every incentive to simply cut his losses. Right? Iran is essentially saying, thank you for the partnership. Here are your perks. Please don't abandon us entirely, even though Russia kind of has. This reads less like a description of an alliance and more like a hostage negotiating with the captor's goodwill. Like Russia has left Iran out in the cold. And this tells you something very important, something I've been saying since the beginning about the nature of these so-called anti-Western alliances, whether it's China and Iran, China and Russia, Russia, and I mean, all these different countries. Russia and Iran are not genuine allies. They are transactional partners who share enemies more than they share interests. Right? Russia wants cheap Iranian drones and wants Iran as a diplomatic bargaining chip. Iran wants Russian cover at the UN. It wants their air defense systems. It wants the psychological comfort of not being completely alone. Right? They don't want to, but they're not going to fight for each other. And now we're watching that play out in real time. The alliance that was supposed to be the axis of a new multipolar world, where you're going to have this axis of Russia, China, Iran, and that three-part axis together is going to be so powerful. The partnership that was supposed to constrain American power. And when Iran actually needs it, what do we get? We get all we get is Iran saying that Russia is exempt from paying the tolls in the Strait of Hormuz. Compare that, by the way, to the U.S.-Israel relationship, an alliance that has had real friction in the war. There's been disagreements between Israel and the United States at various points, public ones. It's still a functioning joint military operation. Western alliances have the ability to weather the storm of friction in the relationship, right? The Russia-Iran alliance is just a photo op. So when you look at these two WANA items together, and this is where things are really interesting, this Israeli gas platform shutdown story and the Bushehr story, these were both published today. Think of everything going on with this war today. And one is a story about the fact that Israel shut down two gas platforms at the beginning of this war. It's not a story about something that happened recently, that they did in the past shut down these gas platforms. Meanwhile, Israel's economy has been booming. Forget that. And then you have the Bushehr story, which is about how the Iranian ambassador to Moscow said he hopes that the Russians will continue to help them build this nuclear power plant that has been an ongoing project for a while. Why were these two stories published today? What are they really saying? Well, what they're saying is we are still dangerous, the gas platforms. We are not isolated, Russia. And don't bury us yet. And we're still defiant, nuclear power. Right? That's the message. That's the whole message. The problem is, and I think that deep down the regime knows this, that the gap between what they're saying and the reality on the ground is getting increasingly difficult to bridge. When your top diplomatic story is that you're bribing your most important ally with toll exemptions, things can't be going very well, and hoping that they'll help with your nuclear power plant. All right, that's it for today. If you found this helpful, please share. This kind of media analysis is something I really think is important and not enough people are doing. Thank you for watching. Please make sure that you're subscribed both to this channel and to the Israel 365 news channel. You will see that linked in the description of this video. And also there's a link in the description of the video to subscribe to our newsletters, our two newsletters, Israel 365 News and Israel 365 Action. Find that link, click it, and stay plugged into everything that we are doing. God bless and Shabbat Shalom.